My name is Steve Menow. I'm the president of the Mystic River Historical Society. If you noticed when you came in, if you aren't a member, there are membership applications. We'd love to have you as a member. And if you're unsure, we'll still take your name and your email address, and we'll keep you posted about the things we do. And if you like that, then maybe you'll become a member someday. But thank you for coming out tonight. We're also selling some of our books and other periodicals that we have published over the years. Before I introduce tonight's speaker, just a few membership notes to the people in the audience that are members. As I emailed last night, we're very proud to note that the Connecticut League of History Organizations, CLHO, has awarded the Mystic River Historical Society an award of merit this year for the work that essentially Marilyn and Betsy had done last year with respect to the centennial for the bridge downtown. As you know, they put together a souvenir booklet, a hardcover book as well called Walk Your Horses. It was a months-long display in the Groton Public Library. Several of us worked on the committee with the Chamber of Commerce to enact the events that we saw, the fireworks in the fall, Rod Coleman's retirement back in July. So there was a lot going on last year, and we were recognized, they were recognized really for doing an outstanding job. There were 9 awards of merit given, so we weren't the only one, but we did win one this year. So I think this round of applause. We're going to have the formal presentation next week at Central Connecticut State University next Tuesday, so we'll be going to that. As many of you know, this is the 50th anniversary of the founding of the Historical Society. We've had several events already this year. The next big event is going to be in the fall, September 24th, which will be our actual birthday. And we're going to have, I've yet to figure out what I want to call it, a birthday party, a birthday social, a gathering, an event, whatever. But anyway, on September 24th, we're going to be having this event at the Mystic River Yachting Center over in the Mystic Shipyard in Willow Point. We'll be providing more details. We kind of have figured a few things out. It's going to go from, it's on a Sunday, it's going to go from 4 to 8. There'll be a supper buffet, there'll be a cash bar, there'll be a DJ if you want to listen to music from the 70s when we were founded, that would be great. If you want to dance to it, even better. Right now it's looking maybe about $65 per person. But if you're a founding member, if you happen to be someone that was here 50 years ago, we'll pay the tab for you. So, but in any event, we'll keep you posted on that. Just a couple other items. I will be sending out to the members something that we haven't done for a while, basically a volunteer questionnaire. There are a lot of different things that we're involved in, and we could certainly use some help. So if you're interested in anything from membership to running the programs to actually building and grounds, does anybody want to cut our lawn? Anyway, we're going to have a field day in a couple Saturdays. I'll be posted about that. Anyway, there are lots of things that need to be done, and we're looking for help there. And we will have, as we have for the past 4 or 5 years, an open house at Portersville Academy. I think the date's going to be June 10th. It's the same day that Connecticut has its open house day throughout the state. Usually it's the second Saturday in June. I think that's June 10th, but we'll keep you posted on that. We have one more program to complete the 2022-2023 season. Bill Peterson will be talking in May 24th, about the latest version, the latest edition of his book, Mystic Built. And we're expecting a good crowd for that, and that'll essentially sum up the year for us. So we'll keep you posted on that, and look forward to seeing you there. As you can tell, we're recording tonight's session. Frank Fulciero, a member, as well as SEC has been recording our talks for actually the past year. We do make them available on our website. If you were to go to our website, this video page, and it's put on YouTube, and you can view that. For those of you that want to see it again, you can see it again. You can see other talks you might have missed. For someone that hasn't seen it, that you might want to recommend you to, you can do that. And I'll also be emailing you a link to people. But also, it is on Channel 12, and just check the schedule for that. So without further ado, tonight we're going to hear from Captain Geoffrey Jones. He grew up in Mystic. He started on boats as a small child. He had his first paying job on a boat at age 16, doing the dishes on a windjammer schooner with no engine out of Martha's Vineyard. He never stopped working on boats and ships. He holds a 1,600-ton master's license from the United States Coast Guard and a bachelor's degree in nautical science from the Mass Maritime Academy, where he graduated 4th in his class. In his more than 40 years as a professional sailor, he's served on many types of large commercial power and sailing ships. He's been captain of over a dozen schooners and sailing ships. So without further ado, Jeff.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me in the back okay? Okay. How about now? No, not so much? Okay, I better stay over here then. All right. Well, this all started about 4 years ago when I got an email from my friend Dan Moreland, who's the captain and owner of a ship named the Picton Castle. He does global circumnavigations with trainees, and he knew I was looking for a boat or a ship or a schooner or something, so he sent me an email and said, well, this is right up your alley. They're going to take this thing out and sink it. The guy that owned it died, and it's in Fiji. So I thought, well, I've never been to Fiji, so I bought a round-trip ticket for 3 weeks and thought, well, I'll go to Fiji, check it out, and spend a few weeks there, and probably just end up coming back after a few weeks. So I see this little thing here. So Fiji is right about here. You see everybody oriented. There's Australia, the Americas over there. It's a little washed out over there in America. Anyway, so when I got there, this is how she looked. You may or may not notice that part of the head rig is hanging in the water. A ferry boat had hit her when she was at anchor there and busted up part of the head rig and so on. And I went out and started to take a look around it, and I made contact with the fellow that owned it, who turned out was the surviving brother of the owner captain that had it before. And he had no kids or anything, so it went to the brother. And she was looking pretty rough about that. This is the windlass, obviously. I see a lot of seasoned mariners in the audience, but for those of you that aren't, this is the windlass, pulls the anchor up. This is strictly manual. You got to crank these round things around there, and it comes up. Takes about an hour to 2 hours, depending on how much chain you have out. And this is how I look down below. This is my cabin in the chart room. The guy was quite a hoarder. This is my cabin there. This is a later picture of the same cabin. One of my crew did a mural on there, these mermaids and whatnot. So I hired 12 Fijians and gave them all chipping hammers. And I called up a friend of mine, and who was back here, who's in the audience tonight, Jeff Thompson, who's collaborated with me on a number of crazy boat adventures and things like that. And I said, well, if I have a ticket waiting for you in the airport, will you come out and help me with this? And he said yes. And if he hadn't, I don't think I would have started on all of this. I probably would have just taken my 3 weeks and come back. So we got these guys. And I paid them about 30% more than they could make on shore, so they're all very happy with that. I paid them in cash at the end of the day, and you had to feed them lunch. And I gave them all chipping hammers, and they started to beat away on the ship, and so just to see what we had underneath it. And here she is a little further along the line. They were getting ready to go to shipyard. You can see we've cleaned up the head rig, and the yards are cock-billed, so we can get into the shipyard there without hitting the vessels on either side on there. So there we go. And here's the crew coming back, overloading the dinghy. And so there we are, hauled out. That's what she looks like under the water. This is in Fiji. Fiji's an odd place to haul out. According to Dan Moreland, it's the best place to haul out in the Pacific Ocean. Not that you do the best work or that's the cheapest. It's the best combination of the two. And it's a little bit crazy to get stuff done there. One of the times when we were there, the other railway next to us somebody cut it loose by mistake, and the whole railway car went careening down into the water with people on it working and things, and nobody got maimed or killed, but that seemed to be the thing, that they would never do things that way in this country, the ocean and stuff like that. So they got, 5 welding leads clamped on there at the same time. There we got all painted up, getting ready to go back in the water there. There's a happy crew there back in the water. Nobody likes to be hauled out. And a little swim call back in the water there. So we couldn't get a lot of stuff. The guy heading this up is Jeff Thompson that I was talking about a little bit earlier there. So we had to make our own mast tubes. So we built a steam box, and we got some bamboo and cut it into 4 pieces, split it into halves and then quarters, and then put it in the steam box, and we made the mast tubes this way. Most of them are still on there. We need to make some more of them, but they went halfway around the world. And over the course of about 4 years, so just some stuff that we made up in Fiji. I don't know what happened to the sound on this, but right at the end of it, he goes, perfect. But on there doesn't seem to be any audio on this. It's not really about that. Anyway, I guess I'm the audio. So, this is perfect. See, the next one's coming out of the box there. So here's the steam box. The steam box is just a piece of bamboo that we split. We knocked the nodes out of it, then lashed it back together. And this tank we're using on a propane burner, this was a refrigerant gas tank that was floating across the harbor that we just grabbed. This is all done on a budget, So speaking of that, we need some bamboo. So I sent some of the Fijians up into the mountains with some machetes, and they cut all this bamboo and made a raft out of it and floated it down the river. And when they got into sight, we sent the dinghy over to tow them over to the schooner. And there's Jeff holding up proudly one of the finished mast tubes. For those of you that don't know, these hold the sail to the mast, where a more modern boat would have a sail track that went up the mast to hold the mainsail to the mast on a sloop. Now, this is a very poisonous sea snake, but they have a fairly small mouth, so it's hard for them to bite you. And he's showing off that he's not scared of it there, and he's throwing it back out in the water there. Now this is a shot I took in the museum. This is a display, a memorial to the last missionary that was officially eaten in Fiji, and those are his what's left of his shoes. So the local joke is that was their last taste of Christianity, but that's definitely not true ecclesiastically. And I doubt it's true culinarily either. Here we are. We got some fruit and stuff on board, and we're getting ready to get going. And we go to pull the anchor up, and one of the worst anchor fouls I've ever seen in my life. I've showed this around to friends of mine that have had a lot of experience and stuff, and nobody's ever said that they saw one that was worse than this. These chain links are about that big, and that monofilament line is probably about 1,000-pound test. So you can't just cut, it's hard to cut it in with a hacksaw. So that took us all day to sort that out and get that up there. And here we are, one of the crew. This is the Dutch girl that did that mural in my cabin there. She's getting ready to go aloft so we can get underway and start heading out to Vanuatu. And just a shot of the boat there. You can see some of the underwater there. So back to this. So as I said before, we were in Fiji over here. And it's about 730 miles over there to Vanuatu, pretty much dead downwind. The ship was registered in Vanuatu. It's home ported out of Mystic now. I imported it, but at that point it was registered in the country of Vanuatu, which is a little island nation there. And we kind of had to go there for regulatory reasons. They were throwing us out of Fiji anyway because our visas were all expired. So we head off to Vanuatu, and you can see she's still in. She still needs a lot of work. The cabin top's not painted, and she's still looking pretty dingy there. This is one of the sails. I got a whole new suit of sails. This is one of the old staysail there. You can see it's got more patches than sail, but it worked. We caught some nice fish there. There's a nice mahi-mahi we caught along the way. That's the cook in the background under my elbow there. And then on Vanuatu again, you get in, the first thing people want to do is jump over the side and go swimming. Because, you can swim in the middle of the ocean, but it's potentially really, really dangerous. So I've done it. I've let my crew do it under some special circumstances, but it's not something to be taken lightly, and you could really have some problems if you weren't really super careful about it. So generally, you get in anchor, and then everybody goes swimming. So there's a shot of us anchored in Vanuatu, your stereotypical tropical, paradise kind of place. And we got a new steering gear, and we were installing it here. It had a hydraulic steering on it, and it started to leak and stuff. So a friend of mine put that together and sent it out there. Again, we got a crew member that's got her climbing harness on. She's getting ready to go off, so we can get heading out over to New Zealand. So there's a shot of some sails there. And again, back to the map. So chart actually. So now we're in Vanuatu, and we went down through New Caledonia a little bit. We didn't stop there, and then down over to Fiji. New Zealand. And all these lines back and forth. We were within 100 miles of our destination, and we spent, must have been 5 days or something, 6 days. Couldn't get any further. It was blowing 50 out of the south, and we were comfortable enough, but we just weren't going to make any progress any closer to our destination. So we just had to wait for the wind to come around. They had the fourth or fifth gale warning that they had with successive gales. They're just coming like a bowling alley, one after the other. And I thought, wow, they're just giving it for another area. This is the one that we just had for the next area down the coast past us. No, it was for a new one coming up there. So here we are. We're in New Zealand. This is one of my favorite places of the world. This is Smokehouse Bay on the island of Great Barrier Island, New Zealand. We spent a lot of time here. Wonderful place. There's a pizza oven on the beach there that somebody just built, and you go gather your own driftwood and put it in there and bake pizza, and other people anchor up there, and sometimes everybody will use the same fire and stuff. We ran out of vegetables, so she's very happy to have the vegetable bliss there because she got to have some vegetables. This is an interesting picture because of everybody's facial expressions. So I said something, I think, fairly risque, and I don't remember what it was, and if I did, I wouldn't tell you. Okay, so this guy's an American. These two are Canadians. She's Dutch, as I said. These two are Australians. He's American. Fijian. So all the people from North America and Australia and New Zealand, they're all thinking it's funny. She's a bit of a church lady. She couldn't believe the captain just said that. And he's not sure. This is a guy with a snake. He wasn't sure quite how to take it either. Like he knew how she'd react, but he sort of wanted to laugh. This guy's younger. He's just smiling. So it's just interesting, the different cultural thing with that. This is one of the Canadian girls. She's all very proud, showing off her tattoo there. It's a little swallow. And I guess the etiquette is that if you have more than 5,000 sailing sea miles, you can go out and get a swallow tattoo. So she had some other voyages, and this put her over the top. So she's proudly displaying that new tattoo. I don't have any tattoos personally, but here's another shot of New Zealand. Beautiful, beautiful country, New Zealand. And one of the reasons we went there is this guy Garth he owned a freighter. I used to run for him in the Cook Islands, and it's nice when you go to a place that's far away to have people you know, especially other sailors and stuff. So he's the reason that we went there, and two other shipmates from that same boat, same ship. So we went to New Zealand instead of Australia because of that. He's quite happy there, getting his hair combed by one of the pretty crew members. We went into the barrel business. So we needed some barrels. You might have noticed in the beginning we had these plastic barrels on deck if you happen to notice it. But we wanted proper wooden barrels. And all the people over on the right here, they're all from the they're all from the winery. And these are my crew. There's the mate. This guy was the second mate and engineer. Later he gets promoted to mate when the other guy leaves. This guy's in the audience tonight. So we got all these barrels because we were like, well, how much are they? Well, $50 a piece. Well, how many of them do you have? 33. Well, okay. So we got all these barrels, and we ferried them out to the schooner and filled it up with barrels. And there's a lot of wildlife there. And went over to Auckland, which is their capital, and we sold all the barrels for about $100 a barrel markup. So we went in the barrel business for a while. But it only, and we're stuck down there for the coronavirus. We were going to carry on to Australia, and then they locked the country down. So we were kind of refugees there for a while. So we were making do with what we had and what we could do. After the first time, we kind of flooded the market there, so it wasn't worth going back for another barrel run. A lot of whales and killer whales and other creatures around there. This is the skate that we made pizza out of, and here we are anchored stern to Medmore. This is in the harbor of Matiatia, and our bosun pulled a dinghy up off the bottom, and it was all covered with 2 inches of slime, mogula, sea grapes, and barnacles, and the crew, mainly the mate, cleaned it up, and we now have a dinghy. And there, so we're just anchored there. We had to go over the side to stay out of the ferry boat way. Another shot of the same harbor. As you can see, we're getting her in better shape there, getting some more paint on her. There's a big rainbow here in ALVEI, right there's right under the end of the rainbow. And this is in Kauau, off the coast of New Zealand, a little island, kind of like their equivalent of Cuttyunk. Again, the swim call, and one great thing about a square rig is you can rig a rope swing. I've tried to do that with regular 4.5 schooners, and you just swing back into the side of the boat and go splat, and you try raising the gaff with the sail off of it, and nothing really ever works that well. But it works really well on the schooner, so you can have a rope swing. We had to winter over there, so we bought some wood stoves, and there's a lot of driftwood there. So the mate found a chainsaw in the engine room and got it running, and we sent the crew ashore to gather up all the driftwood, and we were able to heat the boat for the winter there. Picked up this little launch along the way. And it was a little big. I don't recommend doing this, unless you have really protected waters and really calm conditions there. It can all go terribly wrong. It didn't this time, but it was really too big for the boat. I was prepared to take it to Australia because there's only maybe 1,000 miles of open water, but I ended up giving it away because we weren't going to take it across the Southern Pacific. But you can see we could get it on deck, but it took up most of the space. It probably weighed about 1 ton. Now, when you give people instructions, you got to be really careful what you say. I told the engineer to blow up some balloons, and this is what I got when I told him to blow up the balloons. So. Whoa. So you got to be careful when you give instructions sometimes. Yeah. Here's an old steam boiler. This is a whaling station where there's, unlike the Charles Morgan, where they would bring them alongside and rend them into oil. They'd tow them up the beach here to this place. It was a ruin. There's the old boiler there. Schooner crews are always striking these weird poses here and there. You get a photo shoot. They're all getting some weird art. This is SpongeBob, and I made a rudimentary drawing because we cut the corners off the sponges as they get older. So it starts out as a galley sink sponge with all 4 corners, and then throughout its life it loses corners. So by the time it's a head sponge, it's got all the corners cut off of it. So one of the crew drew this elaborate, and my drawing was just little shapes, but he drew this whole thing of SpongeBob losing his corners. There's SpongeBob in the beginning where he's got all his corners, and then like partway through life he's lost 2 corners, and here he's all washed out. He's an alcoholic, and he's got no corners left, and he's lost his spare, So the crew's always up to some kind of thing there. So we were on lockdown in Auckland, so this is another way that they. Oh, and we don't have the sound. We don't have the sound on this. The one guy's encouraging the other guy, and right about here he's like, "You're all good. You're all good. You're all good. You're all good. You're all good." Boom, So anyway, they made that out of the dinghy sail. Now, during this voyage, we had 21 different nationalities represented in the crew. And here we are in order of appearance. We paint the flags, and we get new. We paint the flag in the galley. So in order of appearance, Fiji, America, Australia, Israel, Czech Republic, Germany, Holland, Canada, New Zealand, France, South Africa, Argentina, China, believe it or not, Croatia, Turkey, Spain, Finland, Italy, Denmark, and Costa Rica. So this next season, we'll hopefully get a few more of those on there. It makes for a very interesting cultural exchange with all these people from all over the world, living and working in tight quarters with each other. You learn a lot about everybody's cultures, and basically we're all pretty much the same when it gets right down to it. But in the cultural differences are mainly just interesting. Anyway, so This is our only Chinese crew member. She got seasick, so she only stayed on for about 2 weeks. It was too bad because I never really got to know her too well. And with all the stuff going on with China and stuff like that, it would have been nice to get to know somebody that was Chinese a little bit better. So it was America's Cup year, and we're in around Auckland a lot. And here we are coming into Auckland, and there's one of the Cup boats, and blazing by us. We're coming in under power here, and it's blazing by us there. So you can see we've got the cabin top painted. So here's the engine. The engine was built in 1954 in Norway. It's a company called Wichmann. It's a 2-cylinder, 2-stroke air start diesel. Weighs about 8 tons, I'm told. The flywheel, I'm told, weighs 1 metric ton alone, and it produced 60 horsepower when it was brand new. I don't know, 160 horsepower, I'm sorry. I don't know what it produces now, some amount, I imagine a little bit less than that. But it takes quite a bit of, you got to kind of be on it to keep it going. We've got a really good engineers in the audience today. You'll see them a little bit later with a snake. But we ran this engine for hundreds of hours on 1 cylinder coming into Panama because we had a bad fuel injector. So most engines wouldn't even run at all. So it was only running at half horsepower, but it was still running. So here we are tied up in downtown Auckland. You can see their iconic tower there behind. The cement thing in the background is where they crashed that wind cart when we were under lockdown. So we were locked down here for a little while, getting the boat ready to go. This is where we jumped off from to go across the Pacific. You can see the launches on deck there. Again, there's a killer whale right in the slip in the dock there, So this fellow, he came on really early, Pierce. He started out as second mate and engineer, and later got promoted to mate when Jeff Thompson departed. And then he was always sitting in places he looked most comfortable in the oddest places. Here he is just relaxing, So I don't know. Well, you can't control a lot about the coronavirus world, but one thing you can do is you can make sure that you and your crew eat. So I loaded enough stores that we could get all the way back to Connecticut from Auckland. So in case we couldn't provision anywhere. And they kept the Panama Canal open the whole time, but it could be very difficult to provision there if you couldn't get ashore. So we had a lot. I just finished the last of those cornflakes that I had in my house about four days ago. So here we are lowering that's a 1,500-pound Danforth anchor. We're stowing that down below in the cargo hold. We don't want that on deck, let alone hanging on the bow for the trip across the Pacific Ocean. Got the sextants out, made sure that everything was up and working right, and we had all the right periodicals and stuff. And again, back to the chart. So here we are down in Auckland, and these little zigzags, we ran into some adverse weather, and we were stuck here for about 5 days with gales coming from the wrong direction. And we were meant to go to Pitcairn Island, then Easter Island, then Galapagos, and then Panama. Before we left Auckland, they had closed Pitcairn Island. So we knew when we left that we weren't going to Pitcairn. But they closed Easter Island while we were underway. So we got to Easter Island after 62 or 63 days underway. Everybody had been vaccinated. There wasn't anybody on the planet that was safer as far as COVID was concerned than we were, but they wouldn't let us in. And so just to head out across the Pacific's really big. I mean, we know that intellectually, but to really get a feel viscerally, this is just a screenshot from Google Earth, and you can see New Zealand, with Auckland down over there, and the United States, Mexico, Central South America, Antarctica. From this angle, the Earth looks like a water planet. They say that in rough numbers, the Pacific Ocean is a third of the world, and all the land combined is a third of the world, and all the other water that's not the Pacific is the last third. So it's like crossing the Atlantic, turning around and coming back, and then going back across without ever stopping. There are places to stop on islands along the way there. So I gave Pierce that boat because we couldn't take it with us. And here we are off to cross the Pacific. And we broke the steering, the one that you saw us putting on in Vanuatu. So I welded these tangs on there, and then we cast, this is a piece of PVC pipe we've had in the hold somewhere, and put that on there and made a drum steerer at sea. And there we are. She's very happy because we got the steering back online there. And we ended up sailing halfway around the world with this improvised steering that we built out in the middle of the Pacific, running off before a gale. We saw 2 or 3, I forget which, blood moons, lunar eclipses, quite spectacular at sea without any light pollution. And this is all we saw of Easter Island. You can see their Moai statues there. This is holding my telephone up to the binoculars, and that's as close as they let us get, you know. So, and then we circled around the island and then off to the Galapagos. So this is Christmas. This is the Christmas tree, and the Secret Santas, and just have to do what you can at sea. So she's got her best Christmas clothes on there. There's the cook taking a bath in the bathtub, which is one of the famous barrels from earlier. And we had some stowaways on there. This is coming into the Galapagos. We started to see more creatures as we got closer. I took this with my telephone to give you an idea how close he was. There we are in the Galapagos. There's one of the crew hanging out with some of the local citizens. And there's another citizen. These are the famous iguanas. They have to sun themselves to get warm enough to go back in the water. The penguins, they have all kinds of things there. Now, if you're ever there, don't leave anything in your dinghy that's not lashed down, because the seals will jump up into it. They generally leap right out of the water, and they can land in it okay, but then they get moving around and they sink it, and then usually you come back and find it like that. This is the dinghy, by the way, that my crew pulled up from the bottom of the harbor in Matiatia that I mentioned earlier. See, so it's a kind of a nice little dinghy. It didn't look like that when it came aboard. I was sort of like, don't bring that dead cat in here. And then I went below and went to sleep. When I came up, they were like well underway to cleaning it up. So, you know, more seals. I got lots of pictures of sea lions. They're actually called. They call them seals locally there, so the name kind of sticks. But you know, if you're into the actual biology of it, they're actually sea lions. So here's one that's it's underneath the cutting table there, like a Labrador. You know, just waiting for dropsies. They just hang out regular citizens. This one's just on the park bench. It's a mother nursing her pup, and those other people are standing over in the background, and she doesn't care that they're there or anything like that. They just, you know, there they are. There's me hanging out with one of the local citizens, a 130-year-old turtle. So we had some more stowaways leaving, and we're headed up towards Panama, and we broke the bobstay, actually the shackle that holds the bobstay chain to the bottom of the stem. For you non-sailors in the room, that's the chain that holds the bowsprit and the whole head rig down. And just all that time at sea, we were 104 days at sea from Auckland to the Galapagos. And then they sent us out for another 3 days to reclean the bottom. So I ended up being 108 days without setting foot on dry land. But all that back and forth over that time just sawed through that shackle. The shackle had at least an inch thick pin in it. So we had to put Jake over the side there, and he got another shackle on there. He got dunked pretty good a few times. I headed us off in the best direction I could to minimize the waves, but you know, we're out in the middle of the ocean, so you can only do so much. And here we are in Panama again. Somebody jumping out of the rig. Oh, this girl wearing she had a thing with animals, as you can see here. When we got into, she's half Maori, which is the indigenous people of New Zealand, and she had a kind of a thing with animals. And she went out and got rather drunk our first night, as did most of the crew. Our first night in the Galapagos, after being, you know, for them it was 106 days, 105 days. Anyway, a lot. So she got rather drunk and fell asleep on one of those benches you saw and woke up spooning with one of the sea lions. So here we go. So I didn't even see this guy until he started to move here. See there? Yeah. This is in the jungles of Panama there. This guy is in the room with us tonight. Not the snake, the guy in the blue shirt.
What kind of snake?
I don't know, some kind of python, I guess. I don't know. I'm sure there's somebody in the room that knows more about it than I do. Guillaume, do you know what kind of snake it is?
No idea.
Yeah, it's a constrictor of some kind. I'm going to say some kind of python, but if anybody knows that, speak up. No? All right. Anyway, so we were there waiting for engine parts. As I said, we needed a fuel injector, so the crew got plenty of time to go ashore and see different things, including the snake and the monkey there. So here we are. We got the yards cock-built again. So that's what you call it when you have them at this funny angle. The top ones there spin around far enough that the tips are inboard of the sides of the boat. That way we won't hit them on the walls of the canal locks or on the other ships that are in there. We brought the jib boom in. For you non-sailors, this thing here is the bowsprit, and then the sort of topmast of the bowsprit is called the jib boom. And if you're more than 125 feet, including all the rigging, they charge you an extra $6,000 for 4 railway locomotives to take you through the canals. So I scheduled it in with regular maintenance that we needed to do anyway. So we shipped our jib boom in, and that put us under the amount. And she'd been through before under the previous owner coming out to the Pacific. And my Spanish is pretty poor, but I'm listening to this guy on the radio talking to the other people ashore, and he's telling them how long the vessel is, and the guy's telling them it's not that long, and they're going back and forth, and they're like, no, I just measured it, it really is that long. And the other guy at the other end of the radio couldn't figure out how somehow ALVEI had shrunk enough to get under this crucial measurement between the last time it went through. But we were okay, went through there. And so here we are going through the canal there. That's, the locks. They have these things leading into and out of the locks proper. We're steaming through there. And this is the Culebra cut, where they cut through the Continental Divide. It's pretty impressive. They used more dynamite in this than the explosive power of both the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs combined to blow this through and dig it out to make this channel through the mountains. Because unlike the Suez and a lot of other things, it's not flat. They're going through the Continental Divide, and that took a lot of doing. And here's one of the old doors, probably original to the canal. You can see it's riveted, so that puts it before World War II anyway, but it's probably original to the canal, which would be, 1915, I'm thinking? I might be a little off on that. Anyway, the pilot takes control of the vessel when you go through the canal, unlike pretty much everywhere else where they might take the con, but they're just an advisor. But this guy actually got them to hit the end of the jib boom with the canal door. You can see the wide-eyed expression on the lady underneath it as all this is going on. So we got out of the canal, and now we're in Honduras. And this little fishing village off the coast of an island, they built it out there to get away from the mosquitoes. A beautiful little place. And this is the next island over. We're anchored 4 and a half there, I think. Did we anchor 4 and a half there? Or just 2 anchors? I forget. It doesn't matter. And so we are now, see if I can make this work. It's a little washed out. It's hard to see. This is like just south of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. Anyway, so we're in the home stretch, sailing up the Gulf Coast, or the Gulf of Mexico. And we're going to stop in Mexico. But the 2 harbors that we go into, based on our draft and the fact that there was a customs office there, the wind was blowing directly into the harbors, and we would have been 25 to 30 knots of wind blowing us directly on the beach with no protection. So we had to bypass Mexico, and I thought we'd put into Key West. But they wouldn't let us into Key West because we had foreigners on board. Now, it's okay if you just have Americans and Canadians, but the rest of the people, these are all the countries, the first world countries that have great relations with the United States, like European Union countries, Australia, New Zealand. These are our first choice of friendly countries and stuff. And they all get an automatic 3-month visa if they want to fly in. So I thought, no problem, we'll go into Key West, everybody get a 3-month visa, and we'll head up the coast. But no, there's a caveat there. Turns out there's over 280 different kinds of visas. And in order to get that visa, you have to come in on a common carrier, like a jet airliner or a ferry boat or some company that signed up for that special deal. So they told me, I called the customs guys on the phone there, and they told me in no uncertain terms that I'd be in big trouble, like jail, if I tried to come in and anchor. And so we went to Bimini, and I put all these people in a dinghy. There we are in Bimini. And they took the ferry boat from Bimini, which is in the Bahamas, about 45 miles across the Straits of Florida, to Fort Lauderdale. And then me and 2 other Americans, a Canadian and a Costa Rican, who had the right kind visa, took the ALVEI across the Straits of Florida and cleared in and picked them up. You get into some strange things sometimes with this. It's like, who made that law? I don't know, but, we had to obey it. So here we are in Charleston. I thought it was a nice example of a southern city to show, people that had never been to America before. And we're on the home stretch coming home here. And we went directly from Charleston to Noank. And here we are off Montauk. We caught a nice big striper our last day underway there. Fed everybody delicious fish there. And coming in by Race Rock Light, I'm sure that most of you are familiar with that. And coming into Noank, dock is maybe 400 feet from the house I grew up in. So coming home there. And somebody had a drone that they flew around and took us. We're tied to the oyster hatchery in Noank here. So we spent the first night back there. The sails aren't even stowed yet. And then my father says to me, well, hey, we're making this documentary about the bridge, the 100th anniversary documentary about the bridge. And wouldn't it be great to have a 102-year-old schooner going through the 100-year-old bridge? So we got shanghaied into doing the documentary before we even made it all the way home. So when we came up here, we had a photo boat ahead of us and behind us and another one by the bridge there as we came up to our dock in Mystic. And there we are, made it up for the 4th of July. There we are, all the flags flying for the 4th of July. And there's a shot of Jeff Thompson and Zeke unbending one of the sails after we're in. And compulsory, it's absolutely compulsory to end all these shows on a sunset. But I kind of broke that rule a little bit because here's the former fore topmast from Amistad. They threw it out because it was rotten at the end. And we grabbed it, and it was just enough longer than the one we needed. So we cut off the rotten bit, and now that's going to be our main topmast there. Like I said, they're always striking poses, the crew there. We had to drive it through downtown Mystic. I don't know what the statute of limitations is on this or whatever, but we had to make a lot of our own stuff, the mast hoops and stuff like that. There was a video about making blocks. We had to make our own blocks. Anyway, got the lights on? Yeah, questions. So if anybody has any questions, oh, there we go. Let's see. Thank you.
Did you have any electronic navigation equipment, or did you just use the sextant?
Okay, the question was, did we have any electronic navigational equipment or just use the sextant? Yes, we had GPS as well, and we used both of them. So a lot of the crew really wanted to learn GPS, especially people aspiring to be, officers and captains and things like that. So.
How did you get all those shots down on the boat from all those various in all those various ports and everything?
How did we get
the shots of the boat from the ALVEI?
Oh, okay. The question was, how do we get all these shots? Some of the last ones that you saw in the last sequence were taken from a drone in Noank.
Right. Yeah.
Some of them are taken from hilltops or from her own rig. And some of the ones are from just somebody that's up in her own rig taking down on the deck.
Nice, yeah, that's beautiful.
After you chipped away at the rust nodules, how was the hull?
Well, she needed some work. I put enough new steel in her in Fiji to build a 40-foot cruising boat. I had the whole hull ultrasounded, which is what they call it there. They call it audio gauging around here. But they take a little sound thing and they stick it on there, and they can tell you the exact thickness of the metal. So I had that done from the deck down. Normally they just do it from the waterline down. In any place where it was less than 7 millimeters, we did something about it. And like I said, the result was about enough new steel to make a 40-foot cruising boat. And Fiji's the best place to do that. I mean, you wouldn't have been able to do it in America or anywhere else. You just simply would have said, no, thank you, pass. Tow it out and sink it.
Why wouldn't you be able to do it in America?
Oh, it cost $300,000 instead of $32,000. So nobody in America lost any work on that. And also she was a foreign flag vessel at that point anyway. But nobody lost any work because I would have just said pass, and they would have towed it out and scuttled her. So there aren't any American welders that lost any work because of that.
The replacement injector for the engine, that comes from the original company?
Um,
Sorry. The replacement injector for the engine, did that come from the original company?
no, the injector was made by Bosch. So the company that made the engine, I'm guessing originally, and I'm looking at the engineer over here. So I don't think they ever made injectors. They just made the rest of the engine and probably got the injectors from Bosch to begin with.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. So he's nodding yes to that. Okay. Yes.
You said something about the engine being was it air cooled?
It's air start. That thing, it doesn't know anything about electricity. Like, you know, you could rip every wire out of that boat and the engine would start and stop and run normally. It doesn't know a thing about an electron. It uses compressed air to start it, and all the regulation of all of its systems are done mechanically. There's not one wire that has anything to do with the engine at all. It doesn't even make electricity. It doesn't even have an alternator or anything on it that makes electricity.
Yeah, what was the highest wind you encountered in your crossing?
Probably about 50 knots. You know, I mean, enough that I was glad I was on a well-found vessel. I mean, she was built to fish year-round in the North Sea. So, but not enough that it's like, you know, super spectacular like the Irving Johnson movie or anything like that.
I enjoyed every bit of the film and the geography, the technology. Would you forgive me a really pedestrian question?
Ask away.
What did you use for sunscreen 110 days?
The question is what we use for sunscreen, and well, some of the crew just baked. There's an Australian fellow named Jake who used to fixing the bobstay. Even though he's a Caucasian guy, he just baked and baked and baked, and I'm sure he'll be riddled with skin cancer by the time he's 40. Me, I hid under the awning and wore a big hat and long sleeves. Different people did different things on there.
What did you do when the steering gear broke? Did you heave to or run off? Or?
No, the question was what did we do when the steering broke? We were kind of running off before a gale, which is why it broke. It was under a lot of strain. We had blocks and tackles that we could attach to the tiller, and then you can steer by pulling in and letting out on a block and tackle. It's a lot of work to do that, and you don't want to do that for very long. Normally, you know, if you're just a few days from port, you'd probably just keep doing that till you got into port and then fix it. But we had what turned out to be another 90 days at sea after that. So I'm glad that we got right to it and built something. Like I said, that's still on there. That's what's on there now. I'm going to do something different before we get underway again. But we sailed halfway around the world on that thing that we built in the middle of the ocean, running off before a gale. So it held fine on that. So.
What are your plans with the boat now?
Okay, the question is, what are my plans with the boat? Well, we're working on it full time. How many people, do we have working on it full time?
Currently 5, 2 more coming tomorrow.
Okay, so we're overhauling all this. We got all 6 yards down, and all 3 topmasts. Like I said, we're replacing one of them that was worn. It wasn't rotten; it was just chewed away where one of the yards would, rub up against it, and it would just wear away at it. It just wore it down to a little bit like an hourglass thing. So we're going to replace a bunch of the wire, and we're building all these new blocks and mast tubes. So we're overhauling, the rig, from the deck up. And Guillaume over here is the engineer, and he's going through the engine room. I had an old Lister 1-cylinder hand crank start diesel as an auxiliary engine for making compressed air that I've had since 1989 in storage, and we just replaced that. We replaced the other one that was in there before with that. That was what he was doing this very day, was out there putting that in. Who else? I have several other people I saw out here. Okay.
I had the pleasure of meeting some of your crew when you first came back. And I wonder if you would speak a little bit about the kind of educational aspect of having those kids on the boat.
Yes. I realized that I didn't fully answer the other question because I digressed, but I'll go back to what are we going to do? Okay, so we're going to get the vessel back in shape. We put a lot of wear on her, a lot of miles, a lot of time, beaten up a lot at sea. So we're undoing all that entropy, and we're going to go haul out in Massachusetts because that's the easiest place to haul out around here. And then we're going to go to Scandinavia this summer. We're going to go up the coast of the Canadian Maritimes, and then over to Ireland, and then up to Scotland where she was built, and then jump off and go up into Scandinavia, hopefully for the height of the summer, and then down the coast of Europe, and be in southern Spain probably by October to get out of the bad weather along that coast that time of year. And after that, it's not written. So your other question was about the educational stuff. It's not strictly speaking an educational vessel in that we don't have a program, so to speak, but everybody gets a thorough education in seamanship that comes on board here. When we left Auckland, there were only 4 people on board that had ever been sailing before, let alone been to sea. But by the time we got to the Galapagos Islands, everybody on board was a sailor. All right, who else? Oh.
I'm not unfamiliar with steel-hulled ships, but the boat is old.
It is.
And how did you confirm the hull plating and the thickness? And
Well, we audio gauged it, and unlike a wooden vessel, it's easier to survey a steel vessel or even a fiberglass boat, because you can put this device up to it, and it'll tell you exactly how thick the plating is everywhere you touch it to the hull. Right. So, and you intentionally go for the places that are likely to be the most troublesome, places that you would expect it to be in need. And we did hundreds of them all around the boat in Fiji and got a pretty good idea of what we had and didn't have. And then, like I said, we put enough new steel in her to make a 40-foot cruising boat to try to address all the deficiencies that we found. But I'm sure the steel she's built with will be in better condition than that Chinese stuff we put on in Fiji in another 20 years. All right, I saw some hands that went up there that didn't get answered. Maybe I answered it with other people's questions. So there. Oh, anybody else going once? Oh.
how tall is the main?
The main mast is about 76 feet above the water. Less now that we have it now, we have the top mast down, so we get under a lower bridge. She's 95 feet 4 inches from the forward end of the stem to the aft end of the cap rail on the stern, and about another 32 feet if you add all the rigging on top of that.
What does she draw?
10 feet, pretty much exactly. She goes down about 1 centimeter for every metric ton you put in her, so which is kind of convenient, you know, or inches of that. So if you put 10 tons in her, she'd go down about, you know, a decimeter. She came up about that much when we filled 20 dumpsters with all the junk that was on board her, and she came up about that far in the water in Fiji there.
How many people did you have on total going across the main leg?
We had 13 people when we left Auckland, and I think we had 12 when we got into Noank. We didn't lose anybody over the side. The people come and go. And then we had different people that came and went.
I was following you on Facebook for a while.
Yes.
Yeah, I assume you're not selling barrels anymore, so do you have a benefactor? What's paying for this?
You want to buy a T-shirt? I almost brought a stack of them. I didn't bring any, but I thought about it. But all T-shirt proceeds go directly to the paint company. No money spent on anything else on that. But I don't have any with me, so no. I guess I'm the benefactor. So.
So do you plan on making it an educational vessel, or you?
Well, it already is an educational vessel. It's not that kind of educational vessel. There's no curriculum and no accreditation, but if you come sailing with me, you're going to learn. I just had a class yesterday afternoon on how to lasso pilings with a rope. So you come alongside the dock and there's nobody there to catch your lines.
Right.
So yeah.
How many berths on the ship?
How many what?
How many berths on the boat?
Oh, berths. Yeah, how many berths on the boat? 22 maybe. You know, so it sleeps 14 to 22 people depending on how well they know each other. So I saw a couple other hands over here.
Any injuries? One question, and then.
Yeah, we had a couple of eye injuries. And then just recently here in Connecticut, one of my crew hit her finger on a saw making blocks. And Those were the first times actually in my entire career that anybody's ever needed medical attention for anything that happened under my command. I was in all 40 years or whatever, so, but yeah, there's a guy, I could not get him to wear safety glasses, and he's always getting stuff stuck in his eyes. But
What about food? Were you able to fish across the ocean at all?
the question was, were we able to fish across the ocean? We caught a lot of fish. We caught dozens of fish, but sometimes you catch, several in the same day, or catch one every other day for a while. Then sometimes you go for weeks without getting them. But we don't have any refrigeration on ALVEI. So, we have a lot of dry goods and canned goods and fresh vegetables. You're in New Zealand, they call everything like squash and winter squash and summer squash. That's all pumpkins in their way of speaking. And those things, like winter squash, lasts quite a while, and onions last quite a while, and cabbage lasts quite a while. So you start out and you eat your tomatoes first, and you don't eat your cabbage until, so by the time you run out of fresh stuff on a long voyage like that, you're down. Well, we were finished with all that. We just had canned foods and dry foods and the fish we caught by that point. We had eggs for 82 days, and we got the eggs fresh from a farm, and the ones you buy in the grocery store are blasted with, they're steam blasted or whatever they do to get the chicken cock off of them, but it also takes a little bit of the film off the outside. So if you get them when they're fresh from the hen house, and you rub them down with a bit of Vaseline, and you turn them over every 4 days or so. You don't turn everyone over. You take the whole thing, you turn the whole flats over, Anyway, after 82 days at sea, we ran out of eggs, and we didn't have one bad egg. That was the end of the eggs that we had. You can float them too. If the eggs are bad, they'll float to the top of like a pot of water. And if they're really fresh, they'll stay down at the bottom. And if they're a little bit older, they'll kind of bob up and down off the bottom. And those are still good. Those are the best ones for hard-boiled egg and deviled egg because they peel really easily. The ones that are really fresh are really hard to peel. That's my whole file on eggs.
How about water?
We carried 5 tons of water. 5 tons of water. So about 1,200 gallons, which was adequate for even that. No water maker. See, water makers and refrigeration, we have no refrigeration on board, are very expensive from a point of view of electricity. And we just had solar panels, and we would sometimes run a generator when we had to for power tools, or if we couldn't make up a deficit, we had a lot of cloudy days or something like that. But generally, we just used solar panels. And if we had refrigeration, we would have to run a generator for an hour a day. And I thought, which would you rather do, listen to a generator an hour a day, or just, I don't know. That's just how we ended up doing it.
How'd she sail compared to a lot of the vessels you were on?
She's not the fastest vessel I've ever sailed on. She doesn't like to go to windward much. She's a lot better off the wind, as you'd expect by looking at her.
What's her top knots that she'll make?
9 maybe. So we're dragging a big propeller. She's got a big 2-bladed propeller. If I get a feathering prop for her, she'd probably do a lot better, but it'd be hard to do because it's a variable pitch prop. So I don't know. Ask me in a few years about that one. All right, who else? I saw some other hands out there. Nope. Well, okay.
What did you see for other vessels out there?
Pardon me?
What did you see for other vessels out there?
Oh, well, on that long voyage, we didn't see any. We went 3 months without seeing another vessel at sea. We didn't see another living soul that wasn't on board for 3 months, except when we did a loop around Easter Island, and we saw some people in little boats and stuff like that. And there's an anchored boat in the harbor, but we didn't see anybody. The closest people to us were on the space station, and you're in the middle of nowhere when you're sailing through the label on the chart, because if you noticed, our track line went right through the label, and the cartographers put it there because there's nothing there. So when you find yourself going through the label, you're in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. Okay, who else? Yep.
Talk a little bit about her history, like what she was built.
Oh, well, thank you. I completely neglected her history. So I was going to put some. I prompt myself by the slides. I don't have any notes up here, and I meant to put a slide of an older picture of her to remind me to do that. Thank you. Okay, she was built in 1920 in Scotland. Montrose, Scotland to be precise. She's a fishing boat, a herring drifter. And she did that up until World War II when she was drafted into the Royal Navy as a minesweeper. And they would use the fishing boats because they could tow a cable between two fishing boats. With the cable would go down the channel. The fishing boats, like ALVEI, is relatively small compared to the freighters and stuff like that. So they'd be going along in the relatively shallow water with the cable, and they'd pop the mines to the surface and then detonate them with gunfire. I'm sure they had other methods, but that's the only one that I know of that was used with a vessel like that. And then after the war, she was sold up to Denmark and then Norway as a coastal freighter. And a fellow named Evan Logan bought her in the late to middle 80s in Norway, and he took her down to Portugal and redid her and rigged her out more or less as you see her today. And he kept her for the next 40 years and eventually died of pneumonia in Suva in his early 70s. Never go to the hospital in Suva, Fiji. I know of 5 people that have gone there and 3 of them didn't come back out. If you're over about 65, they just put you on hospice care no matter what's wrong with you. They don't live that long in Fiji, so he went in there with pneumonia and didn't come back out, and then that picks up to more or less where I started the story.
Where are you docked now?
Sure, stop by. Schooner Wharf. Being a schooner, it's appropriate, but yeah, it's the dock between the seaport and the drawbridge. You can't miss it. Big red boat.
Red color.
That's the color it was when I got it, and there was a bunch of red paint on board. And like I said, we're on a budget, so you really only have red and black, not to show rust streaks. White's great in the tropics, but you got to keep putting more and more on. I may do that, in the tropics again. But also, she was kind of known in that area. She was kind of an iconic vessel. So I didn't want to jump right in and then change it all around. I wanted to kind of go with the reputation she already had. So I kept it that way, at least for a while. So I may change that down the line. If it's too hot in the tropics, I may paint it white. But then you got to keep painting it about every 2 weeks because it looks not very good.
The hull looks fantastic red. The masts remind me of those like ballpark hot dogs.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Like I said, there's a bunch of that paint on board. So,
How about a history of you? How did you decide to do this full time as an occupation?
Well, I grew up in Noank, on the Mystic River here and stuff, and I started working on boats as a kid. The question was, how did I get into this? And when I was a teenager, I started to work on boats, on Shenandoah as the galley boy doing dishes when I was 16, and then on Sabino. That's when I got my first experience public speaking. I was terrified. At 16 years old, I had to stand up in front of 100 people and give a 20-minute speech about the Mystic Seaport on there. So if you look to your left, you'll see the Joseph Conrad, which was built in Copenhagen, Denmark in 1882 for the Danish merchant service of drinking. Yeah. So, and then when I finished high school, when I went to college, I went to the Massachusetts Maritime Academy. And then I started to work on, tankers and freighters, but I kept coming back to sailing vessels. And in 1989, I bought a schooner named the Savannah Beale and did windjammer cruises and educational trips for about the next 9 years out of Mystic. And then I bounced around a couple other boats. I'm also business partners with my father in a couple of commercial properties in town. Schooner Wharf and a little boatyard down in Willow Point, a couple of other things. And all of that keeps me pretty busy.
You know why the masts are swept back on that boat? I mean, is there a reason to that, or that's
No.
how they built it?
The question is why are the masts raked or swept back so much? Is there a reason for it? I said no. There's been a great deal of conversation about this by historians and a bunch of theories put forward about why they did that. And I can't say this is actually true completely, but it's the one that resonates the most. And that is that before they invented wire rope, which didn't really come in until the middle 1800s, when they're making a relatively high aspect ratio of a schooner, which is not high aspect ratio compared to a modern Marconi rig, but it is compared to what they had before it. And they had natural fiber lines on the shrouds. And by raking the masts, when they're being pulled forward, it would have to stretch out the rigging before they went over top, and then it's pulling from the wrong direction. So when they were trying to get the high aspect ratio, which made them better to windward, with the lack of wire rope, and then when they invented wire rope, the more modern schooners, because this was designed after early 1800s. The rig was designed after an early 1800s kind of rig with all that rake. You'll see the Baltimore Clippers, like the Pride of Baltimore and the Lynx, and the Amistad have that kind of look to it. And that's my best guess, but it's heavily debated. But that's the best answer I can come up with. Okay.
You may have answered this already, but did you say you did or did not have a water maker on board?
We did not. Water makers are expensive to buy, and then they're expensive to keep maintaining, and then they're expensive in terms of electricity. So, if you don't have a generator, it's a lot more cost effective to just put 5 tons of water on board if you're not worried about the weight. So, we went down about that far in the water by putting that much water on board. So, down there. And it was good. We left Fiji with 5 tons of Fiji water on board. That's a lot better than reverse osmosis water, which tastes like duck pond.
How much fuel do you carry?
Same amount. Well, it's a little bit, it would be 5 tons if it was water. The tanks are the same size, but because diesel fuel is only about 80% of the weight of the water, it's the same amount, like roughly 1,200 gallons. But diesel fuel is not as heavy as water. That's why, of course, you get oil slicks that floats on top. All right, I saw a couple other hands there. Maybe I answered those questions, but other people ask them. Anything else?
I was just wondering about the rigging. The mast set back, historically, I thought at some point that they did that because in sailing warships, it was hard to sight on, versus a straight mast.
I've heard that theory. So I gave you the theory that I think is probably the most likely, but it doesn't have to just be one. That was one of them. That's commonly put forward. And another one was that the level cross section goes from round to oval, and it makes it more aerodynamic. I don't buy that one. Some it's just like the way it looked, But those are the theories that are put forward. But it's an ongoing discussion. Nobody's certain of what it is. But we've just covered the topic entirely in this questioning. As far as I know, if there's another theory, I don't know it on there. So.
All right, one last thing, Jeff.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Okay. All right.